What's up, everybody? Today we're going to be talking about why it's so important to invest as college students today. So I want to ask you guys a question. I want to give you guys two options. Would you rather start investing at 20 or wait until 30? Most people would assume that 10-year difference really wouldn't make that much of a difference. But in reality, that 10-year delay can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's not just because you didn't invest enough money, it's because you waited. And that's the problem today, is that college students know that investing is important, but they assume that it's something that they can put off or it's a chore. And they make excuses like, I'll invest after I graduate, or I'll invest after I get a good job, or when I feel ready. But in reality, by the time you feel ready, you're losing your biggest advantage, which is time. And the point of this presentation is actually simple. It's that college students shouldn't wait to invest because time, not money, is their greatest advantage. So really why you can't afford to wait to invest, I want to talk about and compare two people. So person A who starts investing at 20 years old and person B who starts investing at 30 years old. They both invest the same amount each month and have the same rate of return. The only difference is the time between they start investing. So what is the outcome and what happens? Person A who starts 10 years earlier doesn't just make a little more money. They make way more money, and sometimes even doubling it. And you're probably asking why. And it's because of something we call compound interest. What compound interest is your money is making money on top of that, and then on top of that money it's making even more money. It's building, it's stacking, it's growing, and over time, as you start earlier, you're creating more layers and more stacks and just building over time. So the key idea is that the more you delay and wait to invest, it doesn't just delay your progression, and it actually reduces your future value of your money in the future. So what I like to, and what most people get wrong, is that they think that, oh, I'll just invest later and I'll catch up. But that's actually mathematically impossible because you're missing out on all that exponential growth and compound interest if you just wait. What I like to think of investing is a snowball rolling down a mountain. And at the very beginning, it's small and it doesn't move very fast, doesn't have a lot of momentum. But over time, it builds, grows, gets faster, and builds all this momentum. And someone who starts later doesn't have all that momentum and they're way behind. And someone who started 10 years before is already going way faster and building momentum. So when we say that waiting to invest will hurt, we don't just mean emotionally, we mean financially. Waiting is expensive. So most people assume and now are like, okay, we get it. Investing is important. College students today are probably curious, like, okay, I would love to invest, but I don't have a lot of money. And that's what we're going to get to on our next point.
Awesome. So just like what Tristan said, we as college students are seen stereotypically as the people who don't have money, right? We work part-time jobs, some work full-time, but we're still not making a lot of money. So I'm going to explain some of the ways that we can kind of cut that habit and invest even if it's a little bit. Because remember, the goal isn't to invest as much as possible, it's to invest as soon as possible, because that's what's going to help build that compound interest and get that snowball rolling. So some of the ways that we can do that is, number one, cut back on spending. So as college students, we like to spend a lot. We like to spend a lot of money on food, on things, on items, whatever it may be. By just cutting back on one item every week can really help you invest a lot. So think about it. If you cut back on a $20 item each week of the month, that's $80 that you have to invest. And again, you don't have to invest a lot, but we want to invest as soon as possible. Another way that we can start looking for ways to invest is by picking up a side hustle. Personally, I have a lot of side hustles on top of where I work in order so I can spend that money to invest. So side hustles can include tutoring, especially as college students. We have access to higher education, and we can offer to tutor people younger than us, other college students, or even kids in elementary school, stuff like that. There's a lot of ways to generate other revenue rather than just having that revenue from a job. The last tip that I have is to set up automated transfers to investment accounts. So when you have these portions of money, these little portions of money, when we see those portions, we kind of just want to spend them. So a way to get past that is to set aside automatic payments of a bank or set aside that cash in order for investing, because then we don't see it as cash that we have to spend. And this will really help you get enough money to start investing. It doesn't have to be a lot, but again, the goal is to invest as soon as possible. And so overall, these methods will not only help you invest as college students, but it will help you to build that compound interest over time and eventually be at a point where you want to financially.
Yeah, and with this message being geared towards college-age kids, right now at this stage in our lives, this is probably the lowest tax bracket you will ever be in. And when it comes to tax benefited accounts, that's a massive advantage. There's two types of retirement accounts, or two main types. There's traditional and Roth. Traditional is pre-tax, meaning you put money into that account, you don't pay tax on it until after you retire and you withdraw it. That includes any growth is also being taxed. Roth is just the opposite. So you pay tax on those funds today, put it into the account, and whatever it grows to at the end of the day is all yours to take home. For us college students with low income, paying little tax now and almost or absolutely nothing later is almost always a better deal. So how do you actually do it? It's simpler than you think, and that's the best part. You can open an account with whoever you would like, whatever brokerage you'd like. Great examples are Fidelity, Charles Schwab, or Vanguard. It takes about 10 minutes. You can contribute up to $7,000 a year, but even $25 to $50 a month gets the ball rolling. The only requirement is that you have earned income. So as long as you have a part-time job, you qualify. Now fast forward 30 to 40 years, that money has been growing the entire time. And when you're ready to retire, every dollar you pull out is yours, no taxes owed. On top of that, if you ever need it before retirement, you can always withdraw your contributions penalty and tax-free, which makes it super flexible and especially in comparison to other retirement accounts. The Roth IRA is simple, low risk, and one of the most powerful financial tools available to someone like our age. The only mistake you can do is waiting too long to open one. With that said, what do you invest in with a Roth IRA once it's open? And that brings us to our next point. Finance bros love to present themselves as some market hacking wolf of Wall Street, but investing doesn't have to be complicated. And in fact, the simpler you keep it, the better you tend to do. The stock market can be as complex or as straightforward as you would like. You could spend hours analyzing individual stocks, hiring active fund managers, and chasing trends. Or you could do something much simpler and statistically outperforms most other investments. Enter the index fund. But what is an index fund? An index fund is a collection of stocks that simply track a market index, such as an S&P 500, which represents 500 of the largest companies in the United States. Instead of betting on one specific company, you own a small piece of 500 of the biggest. Compare that to actively managed funds, which a professional picks out specific stocks trying to beat the market. They charge you high fees in doing so as well. The problem is studies show that over the long run, the majority of active fund managers fail to beat the market index. You're paying more for worse results. And if you're not convinced yet, consider this. I want to tell you a story. You may have heard his name before. His name is Warren Buffett, arguably the greatest investor of all time. He's repeatedly said that for the average and everyday investor, a low-cost S&P 500 index fund is the single best investment you can make. He even won a $1 million bet against a group of professional hedge fund managers, proving that point. If it's good enough for Buffett, it's good enough for us. Index funds aren't a boring option, they're the smart one.
And index funds brings us to the next section here, and it's risk. For college students, risk can be a very damaging concept because you don't want to be putting this hard-earned money that you could be putting elsewhere into the void, right? You don't want to lose it. There's three main sections here I'll talk about, all having to do with risk. The first one is diversification. So like Boston said here, with the diversification of an index fund where you're putting a small amount of equity into 500 different companies, That diversification is allowing for you to not assume the risk if one company falls to the ground, right? It allows you to keep a steady tally on where your money's at in each of these different companies and puts it all into one number that then grows exponentially, like Boston said. For inflation is another thing that comes with risk, mainly the idea of keeping cash in your checking account. Keeping cash in your checking account is losing you money. It's just flat out losing you money. $1 today is not worth as much as $1 tomorrow is, because as the world grows, money becomes more powerful. Those who may be what's called risk averse, or mainly a lot of people our age, are trying to avoid putting all this money into something that could potentially lose them a lot of money. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, being someone who's risk averse but keeping money in their checking account, because that is losing you money over time. Another point I wanted to bring up is the idea of markets. More specifically, the stock market. In 2008, there was a major recession, and people started to get worried. They started to be afraid. A lot of people lost their homes during this time because the economy was just so poor. That being said, the 2008 recession did not nearly impact the financial world over time as much as people may think. Markets were able to recover eventually. It took a long time. There are a lot of people who were negatively affected by this event, but my point being, for market crashes like the 2008 one similar to the COVID-19 virus, they were able to recover over an incremental amount of time after the event. That being said, risk is a very valid concern that a lot of people have. However, because there's diversification options such as the index fund that Boston mentioned, as well as the availability that there is to invest in these options like Ethan mentioned, risk is no longer an issue, or at least it should not be a worry on your mind.
Perfect. So in my opinion, the biggest risk that you can take is not investing now, because that's going to lose you the most money. So I have a chart that I'm going to show you right now. As you can see on this chart, we have a blue line and an orange line. So the difference between these lines are the blue line is someone who invested at age 18 and put $100 in every month in an account that gives them an 8% return yearly. And so what happens is, as you can see this line, even just $100 yearly, all the way up till from 18 to 60 years old, they have over $400,000 in their account. Compared to someone who starts investing at 30, shown by the orange line, and goes all the way to 60 years old, they walk out of there with a measly $150,000. So as you can see, there's a big difference, and that difference is time. So waiting to invest is going to cost you. In this case, it's costing them over $250,000 just by a 12-year difference. So as you can see, time is the most important factor. Just because there's risk involved, there's risk involved, but there's a lot of safe ways to invest to get those percentages over time and to build that compound interest into something that you can use later in life. And so this is our example of how investing really helps college students, because we get to build wealth. So if you're not taking advantage of this now, you're ultimately risking your future by not investing.
In conclusion, I'd like to extend a plan of action, if you will. Right here, I've got a dollar bill. It only takes 10 of these per paycheck. Something as simple as $10 every week, $10 every 2 weeks. Something as little as you can even afford can end up growing exponentially to a number that you could never have possibly seen yourself owning in the future. As we've mentioned today, there are many different options and strategies that go into investing, and it's best to do research on your own to figure out which situation may fit yours better. However, now that we've expressed all of this information to you, we hope that the markets are no longer such a have no longer such a negative feeling on your mind, and that your excitement to invest has grown exponentially.